Hi, I'm Lee and this is my podcast about my handmade life. I'm on Instagram as Louleigh _ on Ravelry is Louleigh. I sell knitting needle cases and notions cases on Etsy at Shop Louleigh, and you can find links to all of my online places at louleigh.com. Welcome! It's really nice to be sitting down and having a chat with you today and to share a little bit of time. This weekend I was planning to have a shop update, except I forgot all the things. I got partway through last week and I finished a whole bunch of notions cases and pencil cases and realised that I had run out of snaps. And then I got partway through this week and realised that, and finished a bunch of needle cases and realised I'd run out of eyelets. And then I was just finishing off the last few DPN cases and realised I'd run out of leather. So yeah, there was supposed to be a shop update, but due to a massive lapse in organisation, it'll be next weekend. And if you want to hear about it, then please sign up to my newsletter and I send you a little preview of things that are coming in the shop update. I do have my partially finished things here. There are going to be, I've got this hedgehog fabric, and so there will be interchangeable needle cases in for smaller size needles and for larger size needles in this hedgehog fabric. Your tips go in the little pockets, the little pockets at the front here, and then the cables go in the back there, and there's usually a little hole here so that you can close it up. But yeah, so I've got this really nice hedgehog fabric, and there are notions cases in that same fabric, just there. No snap yet, but that's coming. And then I've also got the coordinating bird pencil cases. And the other thing that I'm really excited about in this shop update is actually a really cool fabric that I picked up. It's called Positivity, and I like all the slogans. I've made pencil cases with these because I wanted to give some to a couple of friends who are going back into education this September, and I thought this would just be a nice little positive affirmation to take with them. Yeah, so those will all be going in my shop update when all my hardware arrives. It's usually something that I buy in bulk, so of course I thought that I had tons and didn't. Today I'm wearing my Markley jersey, which is a 4-ply jersey by Elizabeth Doherty. And it's something I wear a lot, so it's slightly bobbly. I could probably do with debobbling it. Yeah. There's a few things to talk about in community news today. The first one is a reminder that the final Advent mini skein swap for the year, the sign-ups are open for you to join in. That closes on the 1st of October, and I'll pair everybody up to send out the final 6 mini skeins for our advent calendars. You're welcome to join in if you just want to swap mini skeins. You don't have to use them for an advent calendar or anything like that, so just pop over to the Ravelry group, and which will be linked in the show notes, and you can join in there. Knit 1000 grams is also coming. That's going to start on the 1st of September, and usually it finishes on the same date as the Edinburgh Yarn Festival. However, 2020 there is no Edinburgh Yarn Festival, so it'll finish at the end of March, and the main goal there is to knit 1000 grams of yarn from your stash, which is a stretch goal for me because I knit a lot in finer weight yarn, sort of 4-ply, that sort of thing. So I'm still pondering the rules. Do whips count and not count? I think last year we counted whips or the weight of yarn that you knitted on the whip after Knit 1000. Anyway, I'm going to go back and look at last year's rules and yeah, have a little think about that. But if you want to pile all the kilo of yarn you plan to knit into a heap and post it over in the Ravelry thread, that would be really fun to see. I haven't herded together my Knit 1000 grams projects yet or made any goals. So yeah, it's going to be really fun to think about that. We also have the magnificent Louleigh yoke along, and that's running until the 19th of September, and I'm starting to look at Guthrie and wondering if I'm going to finish it on time. My plan is to finish it on time. I've done the torso and I'm really thinking that I'm going to need to add a little bit of length to that. I might have gotten prematurely excited about casting off. I've done the pattern section of the sleeves. I've knitted them separately and then I'm going to Kitchener stitch them onto the body just because I find that easier. But now that I've finished knitting the torso, I've realised that this little bit of sleeve is just going to come about to my elbow, and I'd like for it to be just a tad longer than that. And the pattern, this two coloured section of the pattern actually finishes, I don't know if you can see, with a tiny wee little lozenge down there. So I'm going to pull out the sleeves to about here so that I can do at least another row of these lozenges here, and then finish off the pattern and go into the rib. The sleeves are quite straight and then it has a tight rib, and I just like them to be a little bit longer. So yeah, that's where I am with that. I can do that by the 19th of September surely. I guess the thing is that I know that steeking and button bands are something that I'm going to want to sit down and give some thought. So I'm not going to hurry to cut my knitting. This is the sock segment. I have taken a little hiatus from knitting on Guthrie because I really wanted to finish some of the things in my sock basket. It is jam-packed full of samples and single socks and all sorts of things, and so I just wanted to finish some of the things that are already in there. So I think you saw one of these socks last time. I have finished my stripy socks. I made this using some Eden Cottage Titus 4-ply for the main colour, and I used a 12 pack of mini skeins from Louleigh Family Yarn for the stripes, and that was really fun. I haven't worn these yet. When I finished, I had, these are a size 7 socks, I had more than enough yarn left over to make another pair, both of the Titus 4-ply and of the mini skein set. And so I've given them to a really good friend of mine, and I am very, very tempted, even though I know it might be quite a long time, to save these socks so that we can both wear our stripy socks together for the first time. And I know that my friend will go, oh no, that could be a while. And I kind of don't care. If they're ready next year or the year after, it would be fun to have matchy socks. So yeah, I don't know, maybe one day I'll just need to have a cheerful pair of socks and I'll pull these out and wear them. But until then, I may well just save them. I've also finally finished my ultralight ankle socks. So these are also made out of Eden Cottage yarn. Oh, hold on, there we go. And they are a pattern that I designed using lace weight yarn. So I've used Titus lace. Oh, they've got little bits on them. I have worn these already and washed them. yeah, so I use Titus lace, and I double up the yarn at the toe and at the heel and cuff, and then they just have a really simple pattern along the top there. And as I say, I've worn them once and they're lush. I really like them. So I'm really pleased that I have finished those and have them in my sock drawer, because it's cooling down a bit, so it's just the right weather to be wearing them now. So yeah, I have one more sock project that I want to finish, I think, before I go back to knitting on Guthrie. Just to sort of, I'm just looking at my sock basket just behind the camera here, just to sort of calm down the sock frenzy that's been happening. So last week I was talking to you about my scrappy quilt, and thank you to everybody who left comments with tips and said how they liked to do their quilts. It was all really helpful and interesting to hear what you do. So I have been having a little bit of experimentation with this, which was always the plan really. I had watched a video from Susie Quilts on YouTube about how she quilts with embroidery floss and uses quite big stitches there, and I quite like that because it doesn't sort of, I don't know, it just kind of looks handmade and nice. So yeah, so what I've been doing is I've been using, where is my little tin gone? I've been using a number 8 embroidery thread to do the quilting, and I've been doing some experimentation with that. I decided to use a sashiko pattern, and so I spent quite a lot of time marking that on the quilt last Sunday. I don't know if you'll be able to see, I've marked it in orange and then I ran out of orange and started marking in pink, so you may be sitting there going, you've marked that, really? I can't see a thing. It is actually, this orange side might be easier to see, or not. Anyway, so I started off by marking the grid using a header marker. This is like a little butter knife, it has quite a sharp edge, and so you just sort of score a line along, and that was actually really effective. Even though I did it a week ago, I can still see all the lines on the quilt. I'm not sure if it would be easy to use this tool to do circles and that sort of thing. It sort of creates, because of the angle, it creates kind of yeah, it was good for creating straight lines. Perhaps you would use this endy bit to do circles, maybe? I'm not sure. But anyway, I had also ordered a stencil, which is behind the camera, but I guess you know what a circular stencil looks like. Maybe you don't. Stand by. You're going to get a close-up of my jumper now. I had ordered this circular stencil, so I did my grid so that the largest circle would fit onto it, because I didn't want to have, you know, I wanted the motif to be a reasonable size, not really tiny wee, because it's quite a large project, and I knew that my stitches were probably going to be quite big and wonky, so yeah. To mark the circles on, I used friction pens, these things, which are by Pilot, and they have heat sensitive ink in them, which is, with my old records management and archives hat on, is really interesting to me. So normally what they suggest you do is you can write with these pens, and then there's a little rubber end here so that you can rub out your writing, and as a dyslexic person I love that. And I think it's just that the ink is, as I say, it's heat sensitive, and this end and your rubbing is just enough to make it warm so that the ink disappears. That also means that you can draw on fabric and then iron it and the ink disappears as well. I think actually I wouldn't use these for anything that you wanted to last a really long time, because I mean, we all remember what happened with fax paper. That was another thermally sensitive thing, and years later you could open up files and the writing would have disappeared. So yeah, I don't think this is a very stable thing for anything that you want to be permanent. Anyway, the idea is that you can draw with these on fabric and then iron it and it will go away. However, I took these back in the days when I used to go to sewing school. I took these with me one day and we did some experiments, and the ink does not go away. It's still there and can be reactivated if you put the item in the freezer at sub-zero temperatures. I'm not sure if this ink would wash out. I haven't tried that. That would be quite interesting to try. And I had a really interesting comment from someone who said, I'm sorry I haven't looked up your name, but someone who said that they had marked with friction pens on a dark fabric, and then when they ironed it, it had bleached the fabric. I'm not too worried about that. This is a scrappy quilt that I'm probably going to keep in the back of the car for us to use at the beach and for the dogs to sit on and all that sort of thing, and it is supposed to be an experiment. So if I iron this and it does bleach the fabric, I'm not gonna weep over it. So yeah, I think these come with the same sort of caveat that any fabric marker does. Test it, see what happens. It might not be what you want. Yeah, I've also been experimenting with needles and different techniques. So the first thing I did was to just use an embroidery needle on the quilt, and I found that was the easiest on my hands to begin with. It went through the layers of batting and backing fabric in a slightly heavier weight twill quite easily, but they aren't very long needles, and so I found that quite frustrating quite quickly. It was difficult to sort of straighten it up and so it was perpendicular to the fabric and push it straight back through, so that you didn't kind of skip the needle coming out the back of the quilt. It's really easy just to drive the needle through the batting and not come out the back of the quilt. So anyway, they were quite frustrating to use. I also have a couple of Sashiko needles, and they're a much thicker, more rigid needle, and they're also a lot longer. And so I found that it was harder to drive the needle through the fabric. However, I could sort of concertina the fabric onto the needle in a straight line for much longer, and so my stitches were more even and my lines were straighter. I hope that makes sense. But I was absolutely shredding my hands. I'm not the sort of person who will go out and buy stuff, especially buy gadgets and things, especially for a project, if I'm only planning to do it once, and so I was kind of just making do without a proper Sashiko thimble. However, I did try using my normal thimble, which I would normally wear like that. I'd normally hold a needle like this and push it through with so you direct the needle with these fingers and then you push the end through with this here. I know a lot of people who use a thimble in that way use a tailor's thimble, which doesn't have the top on it, but this is just what I could get locally. Anyway, so with the Sashiko needle, I was kind of having to turn my hand around and then drive the needle through, it was shredding my fingers completely. So I decided to get a sashiko thimble, which is in here somewhere. This is my little tin of goodies, whoops, of stuff, embroidery stuff, things. So yeah, this needle you put on a finger here, and it's quite a different technique. You kind of direct the fabric with this hand as well. I find, because I'm using the long sashiko needle now with this, because you're driving the needle end with this part of your hand. So actually you're working quite with the needle. If the needle is coming out like this, you're working quite close up like this. It's to me it's a hand position. Perhaps if I go like this, that'd be better. To me it's a hand position that I'm not used to when I'm sewing, and I've watched a few YouTube videos, but now that I've started doing it, I think I'll speed up as I go along. However, my stitches are straighter, they're more even, and my hands are a lot less tired. It's so much easier to do. But I am using the longest sashiko needle I've got now. So yeah, that is a lot more fun now that I have that little thimble, and it was really interesting to try things out and to do it a few different ways and work out what I preferred. And I realised that I'm not using like a hand quilting technique or anything like that. I'm not using a frame or anything, but this is just fun. I just get the quilt out in the evening and do one wavy wriggle across the quilt. It's not perfect, but yeah, it's just good fun, and I think I'm improving as I'm going along. So there we go. If I hold up the back and just bellow through the quilt, you can probably see where I've been. Yeah, hi. So I think that's actually going to take me quite a substantial amount of time to hand quilt all of that, but I'm just going to take my time with it and enjoy the process. Having said that, now that I have my fancy new thimble, it'll take me a lot less time. So that's all from me for this week. I think my focus for the next couple of weeks will be my scrappy quilt, my Guthrie sleeves, and just finishing off a couple more pairs of socks. So yeah, it's been really lovely to come and have a chat with you and to share a little bit of time. I hope you've enjoyed yourself. Give me a like, a thumbs up, and subscribe if you did enjoy yourself, and more importantly, come and join us in the Ravelry group. It's always really exciting to meet you there, and I shall see you next time. Cheerio!